Hey, what's up? This is Architectural Digest here. I realise we only talked about sneakers a couple of months ago, but I feel like we've been inundated with new and upcoming releases, some of which maybe point to new or developing trends for 2023. Some brands are doing crazy creative stuff right now or coming out with some insane new sneakers, and I'm willing to bet there are going to be some brands, collaborations, releases that we're talking about here that you haven't heard of but should definitely be on your radar for potential sneaker rotation in 2023. Let's take a look. The first pair you're already looking at because they're right here. They came out just before Christmas on December 23rd, the New Balance 1906 Protection Pack. You might remember that name from the 2002 R Protection Pack, and yeah, they've pretty much applied the same finish to a new silhouette. This one in particular, we've already seen a couple of interesting recent releases, the This Is Never That collab, the Cordura pack that came out a few months ago, and now this version. This version, like the 2002 R before it, is really packed with identity, combining the technical midsole and heel cage with a more organic, haphazardly shaped upper, which in hand has a very noticeable feeling of depth and something you really want to touch and mess with. On feet, I was surprised how comfortable I found these immediately. They're a great fit, they're not too narrow with some light cushioning underfoot and decent support at the heel. The second layer of suede has a slight purple hue to it, which you can really see worn with my very lilac coloured socks, and provides some contrast to further separate those layers. To me, these are the perfect balance of comfortable, easy to style, and pretty distinctive looking, so it's hard not to like them. And they certainly point to New Balance focusing more on the 1906 by applying this aesthetic that they know is going to be popular to it. So potentially we'll see more 1906 releases, and also this protection pack idea applied to more New Balance silhouettes in the future. There are loads of models this could work really well with, the 990, the 9060, or the 725 to name a few. A total of 4 colorways here, all with a fairly desaturated theme. I like them all pretty equally. I went for the black version. I actually don't have that many black shoes, surprising as that may be, but I also thought the off-white version with the black sole was pretty cool too. The 1906 points to a general continuation of New Balance shoes and aesthetics we already know to be popular, but I also want to identify some specific trends we can look out for. One is that 3D printed shoes are getting bigger for sure. We've already seen dedicated brands like Scry Lab coming out with some insane experimental models. They've got a new one called the Eternal, which looks straight out of 3023. Bigger brands are getting involved too though. The most recent example is Asics with the Actibreeze 3D Sandal. These were already passed out to some athletes recently. We're currently awaiting a wider release, but they come in at a relatively affordable $80 and they look super fun to wear, really interesting texture that's going to be really squashy, lightweight, and super ventilated as well. Perfect for a sandal. The honeycomb texture, a real hallmark of 3D printing, and I think it gives you something interesting to talk about with these shoes. This tech allows for massive flexibility in design and totally different aesthetics to what we're used to with conventional footwear. So no doubt as more big brands pick this up, we'll see them push this forward with more complex 3D printed designs, making this kind of technology and these looks more accessible and more available to general fashion buyers. Longer term, it can also help reduce the problem of conventional footwear being extremely difficult to recycle because of all the different materials involved. That's always worth supporting, and brands being able to communicate genuine sustainable credentials is increasingly being seen as important. Another benefit of 3D printing is it allows for independent brands to create footwear on a smaller scale, something which has traditionally been pretty difficult. That's great for us as shoe fans, helping to level the playing field and increase the number of people who can come up with inventive designs, so there's more creativity out there in the market. I recently came across a live form based in Japan who are making these awesome Monstera Stompers. Imagine foam runners but inflated like a balloon and you're on the right lines. More avant-garde or experimental stuff is always great to see in this space, and I like how they look like a big squashy marshmallow or something. Definitely top 10 shoe that you want to bite into. And the brand owner Com Conception is working on some new ideas for 2023. He showed me some prototypes recently and they look pretty cool, so keep an eye out for those. If those are a little too weird, that's okay, we can tone things down a bit. I want to go over a few recent releases that I thought were quite cool or interesting before we dive back into some specific trends we can look out for. One of those is the Nike Air Force 1 Ambush, coming out in some black and white colorways to go alongside the brighter ones we saw before. The extended swoosh gives the same Bosozoku vibes as the acronym Blazers, as does the plastic cage with the Ambush branding on. The previous ones are a bit toy-like, so I could see people being put off by those, but these ones clearly far more wearable, but still with that kind of playful, interesting Ambush touch. I mentioned Mizuno in the last video because I was just about to pick up the Wave Mugen GTX, which I ended up really liking, and since then they actually reached out and sent sent me a couple of shoes from the recent Fisherman pack, which I was super grateful for. I feel like they're an underrated brand at the moment, so it's great to be able to show them off a little bit more. Specifically here, we have the Wave Prophecy, which is there in the background, and the Wave Rider 10. The Wave Prophecy, I think, looks great, a little bit like the Adidas Spring Blade, if you remember those, with this great cutout midsole here, and in this colorway, it really resembles this crashing blue wave to me. I'm sure that's intentional. I do want to call attention to how this pack is designed with a direct reference to Japan's relationship and heritage with fishing, which really comes across in the editorial that they did for these, giving you a sense that this shoe comes with a bit of story attached and thus has a bit more behind their design than an average new colorway on an existing sneaker. We've already spoken about the importance of stories and authenticity in clothing in several videos now, and I think that definitely applies to sneakers as well. Something which has more than surface level aesthetic appeal is always going to be cool. I actually really like when sneaker releases use a single color scheme with multiple models. I've got the Wave Rider 10 here, as opposed to one sneaker model with multiple colorways. You get a greater sense of cohesion and it allows you to pick the sneaker model that fits you best. I prefer the Wave Prophecy. I think aesthetically it's a little bit more kind of out there, but this is certainly more conventional looking, better for day-to-day wear, and I have to admit, I find these more comfortable. The Wave Prophecy fit a little bit small to the point that I had to take the insoles out, but these ones, true to size, I thought pretty much bang on. Even outside this pack though, I think there's a few nice models from Mizuno worth checking out. Definitely a brand to keep an eye on if you like those kinds of early 2000s sportswear sneakers. Brands like Asics and New Balance, there's no way that this kind of style is going away in 2023. Since I always have to mention a waterproof upgrade to a conventional shoe in these videos, this time we're looking at the Vans and Rayburn Old Schools. A super wearable day-to-day shoe upgraded with Gore-Tex lining but with very little Gore-Tex branding on there. Very nice if you prefer going more under the radar. You do have that Rayburn logo on the tongue there. All things considered, I think that's pretty subtle. I also like that they've updated the signature Vans Wave with what looks like seam tape, providing this direct reference to waterproof functionality, and it looks pretty sleek as well. I think that's a cool feature. I always seem to make these videos around when Converse and a Cold War release a new collaboration. This one's no exception. We've got the Forma boot here. This is probably the most experimental collaboration of theirs to date, and I kind of like it. I think it's pretty cool. I love how concrete-like the midsole looks on the white pair, and something they've continued on from the Aeon Active is the colorways having different branding and not just color. So the black and green version is given a tool mark-like stamp to the heel and larger cold wool text, but the white ones are left very sculptural and clean, which I think was a great choice. I really like how those ones look, and it's interesting how those changes can make the two colorways look and feel very different to each other. You know what else is interesting? That these sold out pretty quickly when they released and seemed to generate more buzz than previous releases like the Chuck Taylor, despite being a far more conventional and wearable shoe. Okay, it's one piece of evidence, but it suggests to me that people are more willing now to appreciate more experimental collaborations rather than just colorway updates to the classics or the things that are popular right now. The existence of all this very weird, differentiated stuff with unique ideas, new silhouettes, I think makes me more confused than ever how people manage to stay excited about new Jordan 1 or Dunk colorways coming out. Like, do you not own Jordan 1s by this point? How many very similar shoes do you need? I feel like I'm going insane when people are like, yo, he got the Reese's Pieces, when they're like one RGB value different from the Golden Shower, which came out a few months ago. Before you get excited, yes, I made those up. Don't get me wrong, I actually quite like the silhouette, both of the Jordan 1 and the Dunk. I think they're a great wearable shoe. They've got a lot of appeal. They're classics for a reason. But people talk about their new colorways as if they're about to revolutionize fashion. Sure, have them in your rotation, pick up a pair in your favorite color, but there are so many more brands and silhouettes to experiment with, and you'll have way more fun if you start branching out. I am going to talk about a new Dunk release though, but this is different because it's not just a colorway change. And in fact, a perfect example of what I see being a potential 2023 trend of shoes which prioritize fun, unboxing experiences, and referencing the collectible nature of shoes. It builds on the success of brands like Mischief, creating fun, silly, ironic sneakers which are designed to be played with and enjoyed and displayed as much as they are worn in a super cool dude serious way. These sorts of releases have always been around, of course, but I think the environment is right now for people to start seeing sneakers as pure fun. In this case, the eBay Dunk looks like it's been cut apart and reformed thanks to these transparent plastic sections here, which appear to join up shredded bits of shoe, in a direct reference to the 2001 model that Nike apparently released literally 3 of, one of which was cut up with the intention of being used in a display. Them recreating that story in a shoe is fun, it's creative, and it gives people something to enjoy beyond just a colorway change. I hope this is a sign to other brands that semi-joke releases still have have value and I think are an entertaining way to tell this kind of story to a new generation. So yep, some people in 2023 may well be wearing mock destroyed sneakers. Let's go further with some potential 2023 trends we can spot though. I said I was going to hit you with some experimental stuff. Adidas and Hamkus recently collaborated, the latter being a brand I've very much been a fan of for some time. We featured them multiple times on the channel. They do some really cool space cowboy approved clothing, complete with pages and pages of lore you need to know before you're allowed to wear it. And they've had the freedom here to work on a full collection of clothing along with what appears to be a pair of snowboard boots with a weathered finish to fit into the Hamkus universe. It's not the first time they've styled their models in snowboard boots, and these are perfectly in line both with the rest of the collaboration and with Hamkus's output generally, even if they're not the most wearable thing day to day. That said, I definitely had a pair of Superstar snowboard boots once, and I thought they were pretty comfy. This is the most excited I've been about an Adidas collab in some time, even though it seems like at the moment these things are pretty hard to get hold of outside China. Hopefully they get a global release or at least some kind of wider distribution here. Even if not, hopefully it's a sign that Adidas and other global brands are willing to give these smaller ones a large amount of creative freedom and control to create these more cool experimental things that we can enjoy. Because to me, often Adidas collabs just don't go that hard, but if this is a sign of things to come, who knows, maybe I'll end up being a massive Adidas fanboy. I can't give them too much credit though, because they recently announced the non-Yeezy Yeezys, which are identical to the previous ones, including having the same price, but with the Yeezy branding removed. If I recall correctly on the previous ones, the only Yeezy branding is on the insoles and the box, so it could very well be that they literally had these ready to go before the dissolving of that partnership, and just pulled the insoles out and stuck some new ones in and then put them in different boxes and called it a day. In my opinion, this design is way too associated with EA for them to pull this off effectively. I can't imagine anyone who's been sworn off the Yeezy brand because of recent events who would still be willing to pick these up. Interested to hear people's perspectives on that though. It's a bit of a weird situation, so let me know what you think in the comments. Vans and WTAPS collaborated on a snowboard boot recently as well though, bringing the military streetwear crossover to the slopes. Yes, the HCHB is an actual snowboard boot, and I'm sure no one will be wearing these casually, but it shows an interesting potential trend of brands being more willing to collaborate on performance sportswear gear rather than separating fashion and performance. It makes sense, right? Snowboarding and fashion is just as connected as skateboarding and fashion, but it seems like until this point, there just hasn't been as much adoption of snowboarding into the wider fashion zeitgeist. But hey, as wide pants and performance fashion continue to gain traction, maybe we'll see people out there dressed like they're going out on the slopes. As a snowboarding fan, I'd be very happy to see that. If you want more evidence, guess what the latest Louis Vuitton release is based on? Yep, that's right, they are literally called the Snowboard Boot, and designed to give that oversized, unwieldy look luxury appeal and encouragement for this style to be worn off the slopes too. Even the Adidas and Gucci collab is getting in on the ski action with a selection of boots designed with Apres ski in mind, and you can see these are positively dripping with 80s and 90s ski resort energy, which I genuinely quite like, even if it's not something that I'd wear. This is a different take on the trend for sure, focusing more on the camp and playful side of ski fashion rather than the laid-back cool snowboarding looks, but it's more evidence that performance ski wear and winter snow sports is the inspiration for the start of 2023 for a lot of brands. Oh yeah, and the ACG Gaiadome, which finally got released to the public in nice wearable single colour options, there's going to be another one which totally says winter sports to me. For another potential trend, I think people are ready to look at more experimental or fashion forward versions of the kind of mocks or clogs offered by brands like Birkenstock. Over the last couple of years they've proved super popular, they've pretty much reached saturation point now, and I think there's going to be something coming in to replace them. In which case I want to bring Yume to your attention. From the Netherlands and manufacturing in Portugal, they basically do exactly this. Mocks, sliders and sandals, but using exaggerated proportions and a mix of angular and soft shapes to create a really cohesive set of models. They're pricier than Birkenstocks, yes, but cheaper than luxury fashion shoes, and more immediately interesting without being totally unwearable to your average person. Oh yeah, and Lil Yachty wore a pair in the video for Poland, so there's a culturally relevant link for you there. I took the clocks to Poland. The WTAPS collab from earlier also brought us the Coast CC NSLX, basically a cooler version of the Coast, and signposts the continued demand for more outdoor performance-focused mocks, which have been popular but not quite hit the mainstream yet. Nonetheless, there are lots of examples floating around, like the ACG mocks, the Hoka recovery shoes, the Salomon RX Snug, to name a few. They're just waiting for their time to shine. I also think Merrell are on the right track here, putting out some consistently cool stuff, not just the Hydro mock, which we've talked about a few times now, and not just the variations of that, like the 80 ripstop and the Gore-Tex version, which came with a fully waterproof boot, turning this more into an all-weather Stomper than a breathable clog. But a new release, the Mach 2 Sea Suede here, which is bang on aesthetically in my opinion, and at £99 also fairly reasonably priced. They remind me of some of those Oakley shapes early 2000s archive beasts are crazy about. In fact, Oakley themselves had a collab with Braindead in November to bring back the flesh and the chop saw from the archive, and they sold out. Overtly technical and very futuristic sneakers like the Salomon XT6 are everywhere in the Gorpcore and outdoor fashion aesthetic right now, so I think people are starting to look back in the archives, ironically, to try and find something new. Also on this topic, I could see classic style hiking sneakers growing in popularity for similar reasons. Everybody owns very technical looking, futuristic hiking shoes or boots. Heritage styles, by contrast, will seem more authentic and more unique. Almost like people want to communicate, I'm not like these TikTok kids that just got into Gorpcore, I've been doing this since before. There are plenty of examples here like Dana Tachyons and boots by Fracap and DMA, and all of those I think are begging to be worn with some cuffed pants and rolled up thick socks. It's a style I'm not that well versed in admittedly, but I would like to see some menswear and Gorpcore crossover stuff coming soon. For one more tenuously Gorpcore related silhouette, we do have to talk about the Nike and Off-White Terra Forma. Worth doing so because this was designed by the late Virgil Abloh, and probably the most outrageous Nike and Off-White collab visually to date. Personally, I don't really like them that much, but it does tell us something potentially interesting about the future of sneaker releases. You have here the extended tongue reminiscent of basketball shoes like Jordans of course, and ACG sneaker inspiration with the chunky spiked midsole. Other elements here like the marbled heel and the zip under the laces make reference to performance fashion. Virgil uses those recognizable performance motifs to create a brand new product designed for lifestyle use. As the Gorpcore and outdoor fashion aesthetic is continuously brought to the city, I wouldn't be surprised if we see not just more Gorpcore inspired shoes, but shoes with these kind of outdoor fashion hallmarks being used as signifiers. Like the carabiner of the Air Force One carabiner for example, where the aim is as much to show an affinity with outdoor fashion as it is demonstrate any actual performance. I personally don't have an issue with that, plenty of genuine performance shoes already exist for the people that need them, but I just hope for execution that's a little bit more up my street than these ones are. I ended up talking about way more stuff than I planned here. I just think the landscape of sneaker releases is pretty interesting right now, and I think it shows that as soon as you start branching out of the standard basketball shoes, there is so much to like, and I think shoe enthusiasts are going to be eating good in 2023 and coming out wearing some pretty interesting experimental stuff. I'm totally in favour of a movement towards more weird, fun, experimental stuff. But let me know how you sit on this, if there's any potential releases that you're looking forward to, or anything in this video that stuck out to you, whether that be potential trends or individual shoe releases. Would love to hear some of your recent favourites. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, that massively helps, I really do appreciate it, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with a brand new video, so catch you then.